He doesn't look back with regret, and he doesn't rank his memories. Paul McCartney simply remembers, and when he does, the whole world feels a little warmer. For more than 60 years, his melodies have carried hope. There are clever songwriters and technical songwriters, but Paul has always been the one who writes straight to the heart. He can turn the smallest detail into forever. Think of Penny Lane, where there is a barber showing photographs of every head he's had the pleasure to know. Few artists could make sadness sound so beautiful, or make everyday words live on for generations. Penny Lane is a place in Liverpool, Paul once explained, kind of central when I was growing up, because it literally was a bus depot. He was the eternal optimist, the melody maker. When the Beatles grew experimental, Paul kept the songs human. When the band started to splinter, he often held the harmony together, and even after it ended, he never stopped believing in what they had created. For him, the music was always bigger than the arguments. Hidden inside all those hits are songs that still move him, moments that remind him why he began, why four boys from Liverpool managed to change everything. Paul has written thousands of songs and touched millions of lives, but there are 5 Beatles tracks that remain closest to his heart. These are the ones he still carries with him, the ones that reveal not just the band, but the man. Let It Be came to Paul in a dream about his mother, Mary McCartney, who had died when he was only 14. In the dream, she appeared to him again, calm and reassuring, telling him everything would be all right, that he should stop fighting life and simply let things happen. When someone you've lost comes back to you in a dream, Paul later said, it's miraculous because you're with them again. He woke up with the melody already in his head. The words followed naturally, as if they had been waiting for him. Sitting at the piano, he played what felt like a conversation with his mother, a comfort he had needed for decades. By the time the Beatles recorded it in 1970, the band was coming apart. Every day seemed to bring arguments, lawyers, and bitterness. Yet this song rose above the chaos. It reminded them and the world why they began. Because music mattered more than money or egos, Paul's voice carried both pain and healing. The gospel-like tone wasn't planned, it just flowed from him. This wasn't a pop tune, it was a hymn, a prayer set to music, something larger than any single person. The piano had to feel like a mother's hug, Paul explained. Something warm and safe in a cold world, audiences have always felt that. Live performances turned into communal moments, with entire crowds singing as if they were in church. Tears often filled the front rows, not from sadness alone, but from recognition. Everyone has lost someone. Everyone needed those words. The song soon played everywhere, from funerals to weddings, from hospital rooms to graduations. Paul had transformed his grief into a universal message of hope. For him, Let It Be will always symbolize faith, the kind that turns private sorrow into shared healing. Penny Lane wasn't about showing off or being clever. It was about returning to where it all began, the streets of Liverpool, the friends and neighbors of his childhood. The places that shaped him before fame changed everything. The barber, the banker, the fireman, every character in the song was real. Paul had passed them daily as a boy, and he carried their images with him into adulthood. When recording the track, he wanted every sound to tell a piece of the story. The bright trumpet solo captured pure joy. The harmonies weren't just pretty, they represented friendship and brotherhood. Every detail mattered, because this was his childhood pressed into vinyl. The result was more than nostalgia. It became an escape. Radio listeners around the world could visit Penny Lane without ever leaving home. They could step into a world where summers lasted forever, where nothing bad ever happened, where neighbors still knew your name. Live, the song always made Paul smile. He could see audiences drifting into their own memories, their own Penny Lanes. Everyone has a place like that, a place time can't erase. For Paul, the song proves that the smallest details stir the deepest emotions. That growing up doesn't mean forgetting. That sometimes looking back with love, not regret, is the best way forward. One morning, Paul woke with a complete tune in his head. Every note, every chord. Afraid it might vanish, he rushed to the piano. Out came Yesterday, At first, he was convinced he had stolen it. The melody was too perfect, too finished. He played it for friends, asking if they recognized it. Nobody did, but everyone felt they should. It was the kind of melody that seemed eternal, as if it had always existed, waiting for someone to uncover it. The other Beatles weren't sure what to do with it. It was too sad, too intimate, too unlike their sound. John and George had no parts to add. Ringo had nothing to play. So Paul recorded it alone with just a string quartet. His first solo statement within the band, the song became bigger than the Beatles. Artists around the world covered it instantly, each pouring their own heartache into the lyrics. It wasn't just about lost romance anymore. It was about lost time, lost opportunities, lost people. Yesterdays no one could reclaim. Paul still plays it differently every time. Sometimes fragile, sometimes strong. The melody stays the same, but the emotion evolves. That's because yesterday isn't just his. It's everyone's. It embodies every regret we've ever carried. For Paul, it's proof that vulnerability creates connection, and that the songs that frighten you to share are often the ones people need most. A Day in the Life wasn't supposed to work. John had one fragment. Paul had another. Two different moods. Two completely different stories. But in that magical Beatles way, the pieces somehow found each other. John's section was somber, drawn from real newspaper articles, tragic car accidents, holes in the road. His voice sounded distant, like he was reporting from another dimension. Paul's section was the opposite, lively, rushed, full of everyday details about getting out of bed, catching a bus, living an ordinary day. Joined together, they created something new, the ordinary colliding with the cosmic. Life and death, routine and mystery, and all of it tied together by the most famous crescendo in rock history. An orchestra instructed to begin at the lowest notes possible and climb to the highest. The chaos that followed was unlike anything heard before. It wasn't classical. It wasn't rock. It was entirely its own. The song announced that the Beatles weren't just a pop group anymore. They were artists willing to take enormous risks. Some critics called it pretentious. Others called it genius. Paul knew it was both daring and necessary for him. A Day in the Life represents the pinnacle of collaboration, the moment when four friends trusted one another enough to build something none could have made alone. Not every favorite has to be his own. Paul has often said his favorite Beatles song is George Harrison's Here Comes the Sun. George wrote it in 1969. Sitting in Eric Clapton's garden during a rare break from band tensions and endless business meetings. The first warm day of spring arrived, and with it came joy, simplicity, and hope. The lyrics were childlike in their happiness, but that's what made them powerful. After years of weighty themes and complicated arrangements, this song felt like breathing again. Paul recognized it immediately as George's masterpiece, and he was proud to help bring it to life. The bass lines danced gently under George's acoustic guitar. The Moog synthesizer added colors no one had heard before. Yet nothing overshadowed the heart of the song, its simple celebration of light returning after darkness. The song quickly became medicine for listeners. It played at weddings, in hospital rooms, even in moments of farewell. People leaned on it during their hardest times, finding strength in its promise that better days would return. Paul still gets emotional performing it, not because it's sad, but because it's so purely hopeful. It reminds him why they began making music in the first place, not for money or fame, but to make people feel a little better about being alive. For Paul McCartney, these 5 songs represent more than music. They represent his heart, his faith, his home, his honesty, his friendships, and his hope. They show how one man turned pain into healing, memories into magic, and collaboration into timeless art. And they explain why, even 50 years later, the Beatles still matter. So the question is, which Beatles song brings you the most joy?